Let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. Breathing in and breathing out. And just giving yourself this opportunity to settle in. With each breath that you take, feel yourself becoming more present. Feel your physical body relaxing into a sense of safety and connection. Feel your mind quieting down and your heart opening. We'll draw the hands together in front of the heart and chant one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Join me if you know them. Taking a breath in for Om. Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jesta Rajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Bisidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagmam Dova Chamushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. Gently releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. So as we talked about in the Yin class, I think today we'll talk a little bit about expectations and about alleviating ourselves of the burden of them to some degree, As long as we're in a human body, we're not going to alleviate ourselves completely. It's just not realistic. Although somehow we seem to have gotten this idea in our mind that we can, that we can become the perfect yogi, completely detached, no expectations, egoless even. It ain't going to happen, people. It's just not. There's always going to be a trigger. There's always going to be a desire. There's always going to be a disappointment. There's always going to be a suffering of some sort or another. The question is, how much do you understand these things? Have you looked at them in your own life, in the lives of others as well? Do you understand the role that each one plays? And so, with regard to expectations, it's really kind of interesting to think every single one of us looks out at the world and says, I want to go conquer that. I want to conquer the mountain. I want to conquer the waves. I want to conquer something. And yet, not anywhere near as often, and as a matter of fact, very seldom, do we look to the internal landscape of the ego, of the tendencies, and say, I wish to conquer that. Instead, we go out there. We try to get lost somehow in the outer world, And we think that the more we conquer out there, the less we have to do in here. And that's just not the reality of it. The reality of it is that the more we do out there, the less we know about what's in here. So we have to rein ourselves in and stop trying to conquer the outside world. And yoga speaks about this through all of the scriptures. Every single scripture that speaks about the relationship that we have with the outside world and the relationship we have with ourselves states that the outside world is a distraction. It is a heavy distraction. And it's a distraction that comes with a great amount of bondage, suffering, being tied to suffering, a great amount of egoic trap. The whole outside world is all about trapping the ego because it's the ego that wants to conquer it. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with climbing a mountain. Go climb a mountain if you want to climb a mountain, but don't climb a mountain at the expense of knowing yourself. I'm not saying that it's not okay to want to go and conquer the waves if you're a surfer. If that's what you want to do, then absolutely go do it and enjoy it. But don't do it to the detriment of your own self, knowing your own self, investigating, exploring your own self. Whatever you decide to do in the outside world, just do it understanding that however much attention you invest in out there is less attention that you're investing in here. So be moderate. So many people today, they run to Machu Picchu and then they go to, some other place, and then they go to some other place, and then they go to some other, and they're going. And in Ayurveda, we call that a vata imbalance. To be going, and to not stop, right? That means that your air and space element are really dominant. And if you're not mindful, it's gonna start causing issues mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So you gotta stop. At least every once in a while you have to stop. And you have to say, what is it that I expect from that outside world? Do I expect it to be a healer? That if I climb the mountain, I've somehow healed myself? Do I expect it to be a fun time? Do I expect it to be something other than what it actually is? What is it that I expect from out there? And what is it that I expect from in here? What do I expect from myself? Do I expect myself to climb that mountain? I kid you not, I love hiking. And I have always loved hiking. And since my accident, I've had some real reality checks about the kind of hikes that I can go on now. Because, if I sit here and say to myself, well, I expect myself to hike up a mountain the same way that I did when I was 50 or 40 or 30. Today, at 60, post-crushed knee, then I'm lying to myself. In what ways are we lying to ourselves? Do we even know we're doing it? Every little white lie that we tell ourselves about ourselves and about how we will walk through this world, how we will conquer this world or this situation or this place or this thing is a little white lie that obscures the truth of ourself, of our purpose, of our dharma. It confuses us. It leads us down a path that it's not that we're not meant to be on it, but it's definitely not the higher of the paths, Too often you'll hear teachers say, well, it's leading you down a path you're not meant to be on. That's actually not true, because wherever you find yourself in this life is exactly where you're meant to be. And that's kind of the kicker of it all, It's like, what do you mean I'm supposed to be here? I'm supposed to be there. You're supposed to be there if that's where you are. And if you're here, then that's where you're supposed to be, doing the work of here and now, So if you find yourself in the midst of a lot of little white lies about your own expectations of yourself or your expectations of the world or your expectations of others, if you're finding yourself in the midst of those stories and of the untruths that you tell yourself, then that's where you're supposed to be so that you can do the work of unraveling, so that you can do the work of changing your perception, changing the way you speak to yourself, changing the way you think to yourself, changing the way you lie to yourself so that there's more truth in what you say. Think of it this way. Any of you ever look in the mirror and say, I don't like you? There's not one person in here that shouldn't have their hand raised, because everybody does that. Look in the mirror and say, I'm not satisfied with you. You're not good enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. And have you ever found that you say that to yourself often enough, you actually believe it's true? Right? So you set yourself up for the expectation now. Well, if I'm not good enough, then I guess that means I don't have to try so hard. Or I have to try even harder to make it happen, to make people like me, to make whatever it is that I'm dreaming up in my head happen, right? So now all of a sudden you find that you're tossed into a direction that is even more laden with suffering, even more laden, because you can't make anything happen in this life. You can't make anything happen. You ever hear the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink? They say it for a reason. It's not just some fun old saying that's past its time. That saying will never be past its time. You can't force anything in this life. Not one thing. Either the energies align or they don't. And if the energy aligns when you're hitting the nail into the wall with the hammer, then you hit the nail into the wall with the hammer. And if the energies don't align, what do you hit? Your finger. Exactly. Absolutely. Oh, that's worth some thought, isn't it? Yeah. So whatever it is that you are setting yourself up for, ask yourself, am I willing to take the chance of hitting my thumb with the hammer? Or am I aligned in such a way that it's the nail, that's going to go in and do its job? Yeah. So these expectations that we have, they cause us to run a little bit amok. They do. They cause us to tell ourselves stories. They cause us to have additional expectations on top of those expectations. They oftentimes cause us to become extremely distracted from our true purpose in this life. And what is our true purpose in this life? But self-discovery, self-realization. Self-realization is not some woo-woo concept. It's not about being all enlightened and never having a difficult moment again in life. As a matter of fact, the moment that you try having self-realization, you're in for a roller coaster ride of your life, because there will be so many ups and downs. And that's why all of the techniques of yoga are so important. The asana, the pranayama, the concentration practices, they're all so important, because when you become sincere at any level on your path of self-discovery, all of those irritants are going to become bigger than life. And you're going to find irritants that you never even knew you had. Every obstacle is going to rise up to meet you. And there is a saying that once you step on this path, every obstacle will meet you. But here's the thing. It's not that those obstacles are new to you. They're not new to you. They've always been in your life. It's just that you never started to see them for what they were before. And now you're looking through different lenses. You're looking through different perspective. And you're starting to question. And instead of following that through, you make it a problem. I'll give you an example. When we hold a yoga teacher training program, it's inevitable. Somebody will come up to me after some session and say, and probably many of them, and say, I don't know, is there something wrong with me being here? Is there something wrong with me trying to pursue this? Because I just find that I'm not connecting with my friends and family the way that I used to, and they're getting mad at me. They don't understand. They say they don't get me anymore. But I don't really want to drink. Or I look at the menu and I don't really want to order the steak that I used to order. And so is it like, what's wrong with me? And so therein lies the issue. What's wrong with me? Maybe there's not a darn thing wrong with you. Maybe this is the path. This is the process. This is letting go and also learning more. Letting go of past behaviors that were potentially troublesome or had the potential to become troublesome, and learning more about behaviors that are not troublesome or that are less troublesome. So maybe you would go out for happy hour or girls' night out or boys' night out, whatever it happens to be, drink a little too much, get in arguments, feel crappy the next day, I haven't had an alcoholic drink in I don't even know how many years, but I can still sit here and honestly tell you, you know what I don't miss? That cruddy feeling in the morning after you've had one too many drinks the night before. I do not miss that. And I can also sit here and tell you honestly that it's been a good 36 years since I quit smoking. And you know what I don't miss about it? The smoke hangover and everything smelling like that, right? So, but to get from one point to the next, we have to have something. We have to have courage. We need to have courage. The courage to say, I'm going to stop with the stories a little bit. I'm going to stop making stuff up in my mind, just other expectations about what it's going to be like, what it's going to turn out to be. And instead, I'm just going to have faith. I'm going to have faith that it's going to lead me in a direction and I'm going to learn something. That's it. That's the secret. Stop telling yourself what's going to be. Oh, I'm going to quit smoking, so I'm going to have perfect health for the rest of my life. That's bonkers. Oh, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm never going to have another argument in my life. Well, that's not true. Whatever expectation you're setting yourself up for whatever change it is that you wish to make in your life, stop it. Just do it and find out. Let it be a surprise, Let it be a surprise and just learn along the way. But I have to have the answer. I'm one of those people that just has to know what's going to happen. Is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? Oh, Lord, stop with that. That's like being, you ever go on that anti-gravity ride at the amusement park where they spin you and they spin you? That's what that is, right? You ask yourself so many what ifs, what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. You miss the moment. You just miss the moment. Worrying about something that may never even happen. Or that might, But as we talked about so wonderfully last week, and in the yoga therapy training, we touched on it too. 100% of everything is going to adjust itself without you. So stop. Just be present in the moment. It requires a lot of humility to accept that, though. I will acknowledge that. It requires a lot of humility to accept the fact that 100% of everything will adjust itself without you. It requires you admitting that you, I, none of us are all important. Nope. We're not. There's over 8 billion people on the planet now. We need some humility. Because when we don't have humility, when we don't have even an inkling of understanding the truth of that statement, 100% of everything will adjust itself without me. When we make ourselves all important, we start to tell ourselves stories of superiority and inferiority. We start to see ourselves as worth more or worth less. And our life and our behaviors and our attitudes and our expectations match that. Very quickly, they grow to match that. So, when I say to myself, as I'm getting ready to get involved in something, 100% of everything is really going to adjust itself without me. It causes me to say a few things to myself. Number one, am I really needed here? Or am I just imposing myself? And I kid you not, 90% of the time I'm just imposing myself, so I just shut up and go away. It's true, Now imagine, if you will, how much energy is saved by doing that. Energy for what? Energy for practice, for my sadhana. Energy for the things that I do wish to take part in. Energy for digestion. Energy for thinking. Not that kind of thinking. Visualizing kind of thinking. But if I look out and I impose myself in 100% of everything that I wish to impose myself in, then I don't really have energy left over for the things that need me or for the things that I truly, really want to do. Like maybe sit down and write a poem or paint a painting or walk in the forest or play with my cats or spend time with my grandchildren or go to lunch with my daughter. Or just sit quietly and listen to the bird drama out front. It's really something, you know? If I'm so busy getting myself involved in things I don't need to be involved in, out of some sense of, well, I have to be there. Of course I have to be there. Do you know how many functions I turn down? People call all the time, will you come talk? Will you come do this? And I'm like, I try to do it very gently. I mean, I do say yes also. But, you know, I look at it and I say, what am I going to bring to this? Are there already enough people speaking to the choir there? What else am I going to contribute to it? Is that the best way for me to spend my time and my energy and their time and their energy? And so oftentimes, you know, I will say no. And then sometimes I'll say yes. But it all depends. And I do try to put some good thought into that. Put some good thought into the invitations that you accept. Because not all invitations are worth your time and energy. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean like, if somebody insults you, it's an invitation. You're going to accept that invitation? Somebody wants to give you a gift box, beautifully wrapped with a nice little bow full of their own personal BS. Are you going to accept that invitation? You know that something comes along with it, right? Is it worth your time and effort to take that apart, to unwind it? The moment that you accept the invitation, you've taken ownership over something. The moment you accept the invitation, you've taken ownership. And there's automatically an expectation set there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. The expectation may be, well, I can untie this bow and unwrap this gift and take the top off and investigate it and not get none of that BS on me. That may be your expectation. You know that's a flawed expectation, right? Because the moment that you dive into somebody else's BS, it becomes yours. 100% on some level. It becomes yours. So for some things, you just got to say no thank you. And some things you just have to say no thank you because it's not necessary. But if I go, people will see me. They'll hear me. I'll get better numbers on Facebook. Somebody actually said that to me once. They're like, we can boost your numbers if you come and do this. I'm like, I don't think so. And if you can, that's really great. But you know what? I've got like, I don't even know, 5,000 friends or something. I'm like right at that cusp thing where they want to start cutting people off. And guess what? I don't even know them. Out of 4,950 people, if I know 10% of them, I'm being really generous. Most of them, I have no idea who they are. They've never been here. I've never met them in person. They follow me. They like the daily inspirations and things like that. That's great. That's wonderful. And I hope that it fills their heart, you know, gives them a moment of pause, whatever. That's fantastic. And I'm all for that. But I don't need to go out and actively seek out more likes for people I have nothing to do with. Do you see what I'm saying? How many of you spend too much time on Facebook? Everybody spends. Unless you don't have Facebook, you spend too much time there. Period. If you have a Facebook account, that was too much time spent on Facebook. Oh, Lord. It's just so true. Instagram and TikTok are the same, by the way. Younger generation people. Yeah. See, if I had said, how many of you spend too much time on TikTok? Woo! Hand goes up. It's just that scrolling thing, you know? It's like so addictive. And whoever created TikTok is a genius because it's the 30-second clip. It's like a whole movie in 30 seconds. It's crazy. And I resisted it for the longest time. And then finally, I'm just going to say I got bullied into it. I got talked into it. They were like, just make the little inspiration things and put them on there every once in a while. And I'm like, okay, fine. I suppose it's some kind of service. Right? Am I right? Like, because I'm just going to be one of the 10,000 scrollies, So at any rate, I signed up for a TikTok account, and I got it. I kid you not. First of all, it was really overwhelming. It was like, okay, this is insanity. It's fun, but it's insanity, And so I just left it alone and didn't even do anything with it after the first week. And then I was given a Facebook challenge by a student who said, can you please post something every single day so that I can see it, because I don't live here and I can't come to the ashram. And I do get a lot of those requests from students who I do know who have taken the time to come or to reach out even, I have students from other countries who I'm probably never going to meet in person, but they have corresponded with me. So when I was requested to do this, I said, okay, I'll do it as best I can that it fits in my time. And so from there, now I post on TikTok daily, or almost daily, because I create it and then I share it, wherever it is that the students happen to be. But I tell you, that gets old fast too, right? And I even posted something recently. I said, and this is my expectation. My expectation is that I'm going to make this little post and people are going to have an epiphany and they're going to be like, yeah. So I put this little post up and it said something to the effect of, I really want to limit my time online in favor of in-person interaction. Because since COVID, we don't have that so much. And so I went on, little blurb. And since then, I find I have to be online more. Because all that did was wake up the people who were sleeping a little bit. And then they messaged, please don't go anywhere. We're not going to be able to get there. And I sympathize and I understand that. And so yeah, I find myself in both places because it's some kind of service. If it makes somebody's day a little lighter, then so be it. But just do yourself a favor and at least be aware. So if you're spending time on TikTok, at least be aware that you're spending a lot of time there. And then maybe get up and go for a walk. Get up and do something different. Just make sure it doesn't become an addiction. Because addiction is another expectation that we carry that's a really tough expectation. We expect the second piece of chocolate to taste as good as the first. And the third piece of chocolate to taste as good as the first. And the 110,000th piece of chocolate to taste as good or better than the first. We tell ourselves, maybe this time, maybe this time, maybe this time. But the reality is, nothing is ever going to taste as good as the first piece of chocolate. Because the first piece of chocolate is unique. It stands on its own, of its own accord. And it cannot be duplicated. It doesn't mean that the other ones don't have some kind of wonderful flavor. But the reality is, what happens if you eat too much chocolate? Yeah, you stop liking chocolate so much. Obviously, I'm a chocolate lover. And I do love chocolate, as many students know. But I actually stopped eating it for a long time. Because it was like chocolate. And chocolate. And chocolate. Bless you. And the only other thing besides chocolate that I set my sights on is coffee. I love coffee. It's not the caffeine, it's the coffee. I really like the flavor of coffee. And I always expect that every cup of coffee is going to have that flavor. And then you have that expectation, and then you go and your favorite barista's not there, and they make you a latte using coffee, not espresso. And you take a sip of it because you didn't know they were going to do that. And all of a sudden, it's like, what is this? And they're suffering. Am I right? Who has ever had that cup of coffee? Right? Am I right? They're suffering. There's intense suffering. There's a spending of money. Go ahead.
You're talking to probably the only non-coffee drinker in the room.
Oh my gosh.
Drink coffee.
Tea, chai.
Chai. Chai.
We'll go to war over it.
So that you know how the coffee drinkers feel. Shambhuji is a chai drinker, right? Oh, Lord, I can't even. I love chai. Chai is so good. You set your expectations. The minute that you get that chai, you're like, this is going to be amazing and wonderful. And they use stale tea bags. Yeah, or something, or the milk is bad or whatever. But we set ourselves up for that expectation. And what does that expectation bring to us? But immense suffering if it doesn't come through. And here's the thing. We can't dictate that it's going to come through. We can't make sure it's going to happen. We can't force it. So then we have to sit with the idea, I spent this money. If I throw this out, it's wasteful. If I drink it, it's disgusting. The feelings that I'm having about this barista right now are not in line with ahimsa. But you can go down the rabbit hole, can't you? Yeah. And so you just got to kind of laugh at yourself and be like, maybe I have too many expectations about coffee or chai, So we can look at it and we can really let the suffering take us to a place. And where did that just happen? I just read an article. Chipotle? Maybe? It might have been Chipotle. Somebody went through, it might not have been, but some fast food restaurant, they went through the drive-thru and they got their order, I guess. And the order wasn't exactly what they asked for, so they threw it at the person. Yeah, they were arrested for assault. Now, talk about reaction because of expectation. So your food wasn't what you expected it to be, right? So you send it back if you can't eat it. This person got arrested for assault, and I thought the judge was exquisite. The judge's ruling in this was that they had to go work in a restaurant. I said, brilliant. But see, that's where our expectations can take us to, right? They can take us down the road of violence, to self, to others, in our thoughts, in our actions. So we have to be careful. And we have to understand that expectation is not just, the disappointment over you not doing something that I asked you to do or wanted you to do. That expectation comes up all the time in our life. We expect the cup of coffee to be good. We expect the chai to be out of this world. We expect the plane to have no turbulence. We expect the dog to not bark. We expect the cat to not have hairballs. We expect the friend to always tell us what we want to hear. We expect the partner to remember our birthday. We expect the teacher to make us feel good and not tell us anything that's uncomfortable. Well, that's a deal breaker. Okay, it ain't going to happen. Just ask anybody. That's one of the things I love about yoga, is that it requires you get out of your comfort zone. It just does. So you got to talk about topics that are uncomfortable, that cause people to look inside and to question, what is the deal with this thought, this action, this tendency? But you see, you have these expectations across the board. You come to yoga class, you expect to be relaxed. Not stuck in some low lunge pose for 6 minutes. Those who know. Yeah. Totally. You're nice to somebody. Your expectation is that they're going to be nice back to you. And not just look at you like you're crazy. Slam the door. Or be mean or rude, Expectations and everything. How do we break that? Number one is remember, 100% of everything is going to work itself without me. So why am I putting myself in this? Why am I going up to this person who I might not even know, or maybe I do, and being forcefully nice to them, expecting them to be nice back? Do you ever do that? Yeah. That's a slippery slope, right? That's got some real, that's like poking the hornet's nest. You don't know what you're going to get, but you think, just because I was nice means they should be nice. Just because I gave them something means they should give me something. Just because I held the door open means they should hold the door open. That is not a worthwhile expectation, because you just don't know what you're getting yourself into at all. And I'm not saying don't be kind. So that's number 2. The first is, remember, 100% of everything fixes itself without you. Number 2, be kind selflessly. Be kind without expecting anything back. Be kind without reservation and without expectation. And that's really hard, because we expect at least a thank you, don't we? Yeah. And what happens when we don't get one? It's like getting a bad cup of coffee. All the stories start to go, oh, they never appreciate anything I do. I'll never do that for them again. Da, 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 da. You know? Never once do we think to ourselves, maybe I asked for this. Maybe I'm the one who imposed myself and then expected to be thanked for it. It's at least a possibility, isn't it? Yeah. So just be kind, because that's who you are. You're just a kind person. I was mowing the lawn yesterday, and I try to be very careful, because there's all kinds of critters, you know. And so as I'm mowing, I'm kind of going slow, you know. And something caught my glance out of the side of my eye. There's a little black cricket trying to get the heck out of the way. And so I stopped the lawnmower, and I got off the lawnmower, and I'm trying. Look at you laugh and fall.
I can see it. It's playing out.
I'm like, come here. I'm going to save you. I'm going to move you out of the way. And he goes into a thicket of grass that I just can't find him now. And I'm sitting there going, son of a gun. Don't you know I'm trying to save you? And I just had to laugh, you know. And he was out of the way enough. So I got back on the mower, and I was like, it never ends. And I kind of went around. You'll see there's a little thicket out front. Just call it our cricket fairy circle. Never to be mowed. Oh, Lord. But see, even in that, right? You're like, you expect the insect to listen to you. Now mind you, it never hit me in this kind of a way until I read this science article one time. And it said something like, are you one of those people who talk to like butterflies and bees and insects? Do you understand that the loudness of your voice, they think you're yelling at them? And I was like, holy crap. I'm always talking to bugs. They're little tiny ears. The decibels that we speak in, it's probably like a hurricane. Like they're in the tornado, you know, of our voice. And dogs and cats probably too, because they hear so much better than we do. That unless you lower your voice and speak low, they probably think you're a threat, you know. So now when I talk to my cats, I oftentimes will speak to them very low. But that poor little cricket yesterday, I wasn't talking low. I was like, get on my hand. I'm not going to squish you. Oh. So anyway, I digress. Expectations. Bring it back around again. Oh, well, there you go. Expectations. We expect that no matter how loud our voice is, people are going to know exactly what we mean, that we mean no harm, or that we mean business. You know. And the reality is nobody knows what you mean. Not really. You can say hello, and there's somebody who doesn't know what that means coming from you. What'd she mean by that? You know? You could say goodbye. Were they angry? Were they upset? Did you think that they were a little off when they left? What do you think they meant by that? Yeah, we think that everybody should just automatically know. So the third thing is speak less. Speak less. You'll cause yourself and others less confusion. But just know that when you're practicing speaking less, that means you're probably thinking more. So the fourth thing, meditate more. Meditate more so that you can discover within yourself that space where thoughts aren't pulling you around. You know, you're not like a dog on a leash or a cat in a harness or a horse being led to the water, right? Your thoughts aren't the ones in control. Meditate more. Concentrate more. In yoga, we say there's the trayama. And the trayama, the last three of Patanjali's Eightfold Path are concentration, meditation, and self-realization or absorption. Concentration comes first. And that's when you sit and allow yourself to become one-pointed. So instead of having your attention being everywhere on the cricket, on the trip, on this, on that, on last year's conversation with Shambhu, on everything, you take it in and you make it one-pointed. I'm going to focus on my breath. I'm going to focus on writing a poem. I'm going to focus on this art. I'm going to focus on the Divine Mother. I'm going to focus on one thing, concentration. And then through that practice of concentration, we naturally move into a state of meditation, which is a longer concentration. And it's a concentration that it lasts a little while, and you're not there so much, like your ego is not there so much, hardly at all. It's just peace, you know? But there's still a little semblance. There's still a little bit of a, oh, this is okay. I could do this. Oh, no, I can't. Oh, yes, I can. There's still a little bit of thought coming through. And those thoughts are going to show you what your expectations are and what your belief systems are. And then if you become really, I don't like to say good at meditation because you can't be good at meditation. It's not possible. You can be good at concentration. And that's what most of us do in yoga classes. And we don't actually meditate. We concentrate. But at the end of class, when you sit there and you're focusing on your breath, you're concentrating because you're focusing on something. And then if you fall off of the abyss of peace and you're no longer concentrating, then maybe you're in meditation. Maybe. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're like, oh, how long have I been here? Then you're not meditating anymore. Then you're distracted. And you pull yourself back to the breath. Now you're concentrating again. And it's this back and forth. And initially, the concentration doesn't last very long. A second or two or three, maybe 5. Eventually, maybe you get to 10 or 30 seconds. Longer and longer over time as you perfect your ability to be one-pointed, to be concentrative. And then as you perfect that ability to be concentrative, you fall into what's called samadhi, self-realization or absorption. And that's where the ego self is not there at all. You can't come out of it and say, I had a really good samadhi yesterday, Shambhu. It was so wonderful.
What color was it?
Thomas, that samadhi was divine, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because you're not there, you know? So there may just be an overwhelming sense of joy. But it's not joy because you enjoyed what you were doing. You weren't there to know you were enjoying it. It's joy because the after effect, the consequence of the samadhi has left you light. Left you with some difference. You know, it has caused something within you to awaken or to change. And that leaves behind a sense of joy. And that's what you're reflecting on, is what's been left behind. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's hard to imagine what it is to not be present, because everything that we understand about this world, about this life, is because we're here. We have 5 senses. And we're constantly interacting with those senses to make sense of the world and our place in it. So we can't even imagine. This is why death is our greatest fear. Abhinivesha, our greatest fear is death and dying. Because we can't imagine this world without ourselves in it. We can't imagine it. So how do we explain samadhi when we can't imagine our absence in this world? It terrifies us, doesn't it? Just the thought terrifies people. Oh, I couldn't imagine not being here. Even the little tiny deaths, the moment-to-moment deaths, right? The death of a relationship, the death of a job, the death of a great moment, that terrifies us. It's all part of abhinivesha. It's all part of fear of death and dying. And it is, again, our greatest fear. But what if for just a moment you could? What if for just a moment you could imagine this world without your ego sense? And you could use your imagination, called divine imagination, and it is called that in yoga. In the scriptures, there's actually a scripture that talks just about that, the divine imagination. What if you could imagine this world without your ego and only with peace? You as peace, a peaceful energy moving through the world. It's called witnessing. That's what we call witnessing. You are a peaceful energy that is just seeing, just witnessing, just present. Some of you might be thinking, that sounds boring. But it doesn't. It's not boring at all. Because can you imagine, just think for a moment of the greatest, most memorable moment that you had in your life. Happy moment, happy moment. Imagine that. And imagine all of everything that came along with that moment. The sadness when it was over, the constant remembrance, trying to get back to something maybe. People do that a lot with like teenage relationships. Like, oh, I want to get back to that. Why do you want to get back to that? You have everything to look forward to and to be in now, Now imagine that moment of whatever the happiness was. Now imagine that moment happening, but you're a witness. You don't have to fear it being over. You don't have to fear it not being what you thought it was. You don't have to fear lack of fulfillment of your expectations. No disappointment. You don't have to worry about the joy of it ever ending. I like that. My ego likes that. My ego says that means that you get to have complete enjoyment. Complete unfiltered by suffering, unfiltered by fear of disappointment. You get to have complete enjoyment. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Reserved enthusiasm, I call it, with an occasional happy surprise.
There you have it. Absolutely. That's good. I like that. I'll credit you for that when I share it. Like Paul said.
I'm traveling so much.
Any questions or reflections? So you're all good with expectations now. Thomas?
A little reflection on the invitation and the expectation. Right? So the invitation is going to create the frequency of the expectation, right? So when you invoke the divine, right? So then what comes is or what's expected, so to speak. But what I'm really working with in my life right now is the understanding of our contracts, and that the invitation expectation is a contract. Like and that we have complete dominion over that, but we're so habituated to kind of do what we did yesterday, right? Or to expect, kind of based upon past experience. So this dissolve, right? The dissolve of this contract, right? Is really what I'm working at. And what I really appreciate about what you shared today, maybe we could talk more, is that, so there's the recognition that I agreed to this, I invited this into my life, right? And then there's the possibility, right, to let it go, right, to dissolve it, right? But first I got to recognize that I, so the dissolve comes, and then the third step is this covenant, right, is what I call it. It's just a sense of allowing the divine to take this raw material kind of stuff and allow it to be divinified. And that I love that divine imagination. I just really feel like I'm going to thank you for completing the three-step process that I'm using right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that reflection.
Yeah.
It is such a process, and there's no wrong way to do this, right? There's certainly a way that's full of suffering, but it's not wrong, because you're always learning if you're open to learning. When it might be is just not optimal, because if you're not open to learning and you're in the midst of process, then you're getting yourself stuck in the mud of suffering more and more and more. So there's no wrong. Just understand that however you handle things, you're either going to suffer more or you're going to suffer less. You're either going to open yourself up to greater joy and understanding, or you're going to shut it down and hide in the grass of ignorance, for a little while. No matter how much divinity is putting that hand right in front of you and saying, come on, I'm going to take care of you. And Ganesh does that, doesn't he? And Shiva does that, and the Mother Durga does that. They're all right there. And we're all the crickets. We're hiding in the grass of ignorance, and divinity is just there for us, saying all you have to do is get on board. But you go hide in the grass if you want to. Nothing wrong with that. It's your human condition. Now, when you do finally realize, at some point, for one thing, and here's the other thing, so I think we're up to like 6, understand that advancement in one area of life is not advancement in all areas of life. So that's wonderful that you don't argue with your mother anymore. That doesn't mean you're not going to argue with your daughter or your friend or it's wonderful that you think that you have resolved your tendency to get angry, but that doesn't make it everybody else's fault when you do. Right? So you have to understand that there is process, and process is in pieces and parts. It doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't. And then when you do have an epiphany, like, I'm going to be ready to let this go, explore what you mean by that, because it's one thing to truly set something free, and it's another thing to get the hell rid of it. So if we say, I'm letting it go because this no longer serves me, you're lying to yourself. We don't let things go because they no longer serve us. We get rid of them because they're uncomfortable to the ego. If we're letting something go because we recognize that our interaction with that thing, whether it's a circumstance or a person or a belief, that it's leading us to violence, and it's empowering the violence of someone or something else, we're going to set it free of our expectations. I spoke on a council for boundaries one time during the Me Too movement. And so I was part of this panel. And we were talking, it was a panel on healthy boundaries. And And I guess there were like 5 or 6 of us there or something, and a room, full of mostly women. But there were some men there too, which was really good and wonderful. And everybody's talking about healthy boundaries, and I spoke last. And so, it was healthy boundary, recognize when something's going to hurt you, put a barrier up to that, do not allow them in, et cetera, and so on. And these are all very fine ways to address healthy boundaries. They're quite psychologically acceptable in the world of counseling today. This is the way that we look at healthy boundaries. Then it came my turn to speak, and I said, well, I'm just going to preface this by saying you might not like what I'm going to say right now. And their ears perked up. And I said, so I agree with everything that everybody just said, to some degree. I agree. I think that there's a place for everything that was just said. However, there also comes a moment in each and every one of our lives that we have to acknowledge that healthy boundaries are not about keeping other people out, circumstances away, uncomfortableness at bay. Healthy boundaries are about creating a space in which I am doing my work so that I no longer harm you, so that I no longer have expectations of you, so that I can stop doing whatever it is that I myself am doing that's empowering an unhealthy situation. Yes, there's absolutely a time where the boundary is put there because there's a fear of violence. But you can't do everything based on fear. You have to do something in your life based on growth, based on involution and evolution, based on goodness. And so the individual who creates a healthy boundary because they're looking to hold a space within which they can become the best version of themselves, that is a healthy boundary. But a person who puts up a boundary only to keep out that which they are afraid of, that boundary is not going to last. It won't last because something built on fear is very destructive in and of itself. It may serve a purpose initially, but it will not last because there's nothing holding it up except fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's got to be more to it.
Divine imagination.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. I love that saying, fake it till you make it. And people say, well, why? It's like lying to yourself. I'm like, no, actually, that phrase is so misunderstood. It's like, I'm going to lie to myself. No, you're going to imagine. Why is imagination, so valued and yet trying new things so devalued? Well, I feel like an imposter. I feel like I'm lying to myself. I said, no, you don't. It's just that the work is freaking hard and you don't want to do hard work. You want it to be easy. All people want it to be easy. Just do the hard work. Imagine yourself in the most radiant form you possibly can imagine and do the work to be that. And what you'll find, and this will be the last one because I could keep going. What you'll find is that by investing wholly in your work, you will have fewer expectations of others. It's only when we're not invested in the work of self-discovery, in the work of self-realization, in the work of unity, kindness, nonviolence, when we're not invested truly in that work, we will have expectations of others. And those expectations take many forms. And perhaps one of the most common ones is this. Well, I've tried to be nice. And I've tried to be like in line with ahimsa. But they won't let me. Yeah? Stop saying that. Because they can't let you or allow you. It doesn't matter what they do. The only thing that matters is what you do. Period. For you, that's the only thing that matters. Yeah. Any other questions or reflections? We're just at about time. Are we good? Okay. So you've all got your expectations at bay now. Yeah? All right. Good. Let's sit tall. Close the eyes. What I love is that we can laugh about this stuff too, you know? Like, we all know how serious it is. It's like really serious. But we can also laugh about it because we're like, oh my gosh, we're so the cricket in the grass. Oh. All right. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a nice breath in. Om.